Welcome back.
Yeah, the Bank of Canada is about to make its latest interest rate decision later this morning.
The central bank's benchmark interest rate currently sits at 2.25%, and many economists don't expect that to change. The rate announcement comes as the Canadian economy faces an uncertain future with the review of the Canada-US-Mexico trade agreement coming up later this year. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem said in December that inflation is likely to hold at around its target of 2% this year.
Okay, so with all that in mind, let's bring in Ian Lee, Associate Professor at the Sprott School of Business, for what could be taking shape. Professor Lee, we always enjoy our conversations with you on these mornings. Let's talk about the Bank of Canada rate today. Many economists believe it's going to be holding. If it does, A, do you believe that? And B, what does that say about the state of our economy?
Good to speak to both of you, Nick and Jen. Yes, I do agree. The economy is not doing gangbusters, let's be clear, but it is not in recession. It is, humming along at a relatively subdued rate of growth. Inflation is under control, but it's not quite 2%. They said it's in the target range. That's true. It's been around more like 2.4, a bit on the high side. And I think that the Bank of Canada learned its lesson from the beginning of COVID when they drove rates almost down to zero. And that, in conjunction with incredible amounts of fiscal stimulus, let that inflation genie out of the bottle that we all knew about for the last, 4 or 5 years. And that then caused them to drive interest rates up. So they don't want to do that again. So I think they're going to sit on this at 2.5. In fact, there's a consensus that they will probably stay there for at least 6 months.
Yeah, and Professor Lee, it seems like we've been in a holding pattern since last year, since pretty much, U.S. President Donald Trump announced this trade war with Canada. A lot's have happened. We've heard that speech from Prime Minister Mark Carney at Davos, kind of like accepting the stage of grief in the end of a relationship, saying this is the reality now, finally acceptance. What do you predict is going to happen within the next 6 months with this upcoming U.S.-Mexico trade agreement deal?
Jen, I really do appreciate that question, because I do believe that is the overarching strategic question facing us. Much as I respect what Prime Minister Carney has been doing so far in terms of getting the economy going again, the announcements, energy superpower, and so forth, I gently disagree with him about that radical rupture. I'm much more in the camp of Christine Lagarde, who gave a speech at Davos the following day, and she said, I have to respectfully disagree with my good friend Mark. That's what she said. She said, yes, the rules are changing. Yes, Trump is changing the rules. Yes, it's much more self-interested. But she argued there isn't a radical rupture. And why I'm saying this isn't just some kind of a philosophical discussion. If it really is a radical rupture, there are Canadians who are legitimately saying, well, what on earth are you even doing negotiating with Donald Trump for a trade agreement? And so I think that the answer to that is, well, there's very much a change in the rules. It's not a radical rupture. Yes, we can and ought and should be dealing with negotiating a new CUSMA. And so the answer to your question is, we desperately need a new CUSMA. It will be a different CUSMA with the negotiations. We're going to have to make some trade-offs. And so that is going to be the answer. What is that new CUSMA going to look at? The alternative, I believe, is unthinkable of no CUSMA. Some suggest the Canadian dollar could go down to 50 cents, which would drive our imported goods through the roof, because we import about 1/3 of our economy.
Okay, we definitely don't want to see that. In the meantime, we get the premiers meeting today in Ottawa. Professor, they're kind of trying to discuss things as well. I mean, they're at a slightly different level here. We've got this sort of, seeming unanimity and, kind of collective goal here. What do you make of the premiers now? Because they're getting together much more regularly, really with a huge focus here.
You're absolutely right. And that's because of the splits in Canada. We know those splits. Western Canada, the premiers are much more focused on agriculture, as we've seen, Premier of Saskatchewan, for example. Energy, of course, Premier of Alberta. Whereas Ontario has been more manufacturing-centric. And so I thought that meeting with Premier Ford and Prime Minister Carney was very important, because it looks like Premier Carney has come around, Premier Ford has come around to Carney's vision. I am guessing it's not that he compromised so much as Carney explained to him where they're going by allowing the Chinese in. And I think that direction is to encourage them to build plants, auto plants in Ontario.
Yeah, it could be a long-term plan. All right, that is our time this morning. Professor Ian Lee with the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Always appreciate your time. It's good to see you in 2026 as well. Thank you.